Good morning, Yorkshire Classic Cars Limited fans. You join me again here today on a beautiful, windswept, sunny morning in Retford. We're back with the Spitfire, and as you can see, I've applied a little red oxide to the repair section I put in yesterday, and I'm hoping, and weirdly, this red oxide seems to have a bit of a sheen to it. But things have moved on slightly. Yesterday, I did a little more. So what I'm going to show you is hopefully where I'm going to go with this, okay? Today's plan is to try and fit the corner panel, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you a little close-up of the painted section there, so you can just see the seam there. That's the weld. I've scuffed it here with the panel when I was trying it on. What I've done here is I've actually cut to the seam there. Now, usually I leave that a little oversized, which I have done anyway. It's not absolutely tight to the seam. But that was just to give me some sort of a datum size for where this fits. Now, if you recall from the first video, if you haven't seen it, you might need to watch that. Here, as you can probably see if I get really in close, has just been stoved in. I don't know why they've done that. I assume when they've tried to fit the new panel, the new repair section, it didn't fit, so they've just basically cut and braid in the metal. So what I've done is slit the welds back out of that, which is going to be a bit of an interesting weld, but, you know, I can do it. So. And then what I'm going to do is dress that section back to the appropriate shape. Now, I'm not a panel beater. I can only get that close. It will still need a little bit of filler in there, but, you know, I'll get that pretty good. I've cut here to allow the front of the panel to go in, and I've just got to whip that bit out. So I just need to cut up here. This part has actually separated a modicum from the wheel arch. The customer has decided just to put this arch in now. You know, needing that wing doing instantly, not really desperate, you know. So we're going to fit the panel, and as I've trimmed off there just above the existing weld, and I've removed the section that was left inside, I'm going to try and show you now how I'm going to try and fit that into there. So I will set that up and let you see that, and then hopefully we should be on with the welding. So I've set you up on the tripod there. I've got my seeing eye goggles on because I've literally just nicked that and I'd forgotten to start the camera. So I've nicked up there. Now, I don't want to take too much out there, and I'll make that obvious in a minute. I'm just going to whip this wheel off. Now, these are only 3/8 wheel studs, and I don't ugga-dugga them. I ugga-dugga them off, but not on. This is only 3/8 gun, and honestly, you're not going to damage anything with it. But second of all, I'm going to be putting Freelander wheel studs on this and Freelander wheel nuts, which are a bigger metric stud pattern. So I will need replacement nuts. And replacement studs. So if I was to damage one, it wouldn't matter anyway, quite honestly. But it doesn't. I know that. It's a 6-wall impact socket, even though it's only 3/8. So I'll just pop that wheel over there. You should be able to see in here. I'll just zoom you in a little by picking you up there. If you can see there, I've cut that with a junior hacksaw across there, and this should now just unpeel from there carefully. Famous last words. We all used to watch Blue Peter as kids, I'm sure, if you're here in the UK. All my tools are scattered around the floor from last night because I had a red oxide incident where my red oxide went on the floor. So I'm just going to peel this off, hopefully, just gently. Oops. That's better welded on than I expected, if I'm honest. So, yeah, I was hoping to drop my sump off as I collected the bonnet, because I've done loads of, I've made a custom sump for my Rover V8 on my Capri. And basically, because I've used the MIG, it's all full of spatter inside. And I obviously don't want that to get into the oil pump. So I want him to sandblast it inside. That's a hot rivet, I think. That's an interesting way of fixing it. Right, let me just clean that edge up. So yeah, I took 15 minutes. Took 15 minutes just to finish the little. I put a baffle in my sump. Now, as I'm doing that with the grinder, all I'm removing there is the spot welds. I'm not trying to remove the paint for welding. That would thin it down too much. I'm just taking any tops off any spot welds. Luckily, it appears that the previous builder couldn't do that. Again, nick that with the angle grinder. It's kind of inevitable. I will weld that back up before I start. So hopefully, let me just check you can see where I'm pointing at. Yeah. Hopefully, you should be able to see that if I ease that in behind there, it fits quite nicely. We'll need my mole grips on there just to try the position. Excuse me. Sorry, I know I'm putting my head in front of you, but I am trying to achieve a job here too. So as you pull it in, it does reduce the height a little. So I may have to just dress that back a bit. However, I think there is the mildest overlap there. I may have to just dress the panel a little. I know I have to dress the wheel arch part of it. So, yeah, there we go. Yeah, I can't get that to pull down at the minute, but I'll have to. That's sort of the plan there. So I won't clamp it up just yet. I'll try and clamp it at this end because it's all the repair section needs some TLC. But yeah, that's sort of the fix I'm hoping for. Obviously, this is a tiny weeny bit higher. Just ease it in a bit, but there will be some trimming, and obviously I've got to remove that filler, and I want to just dress this panel so it all will come back a little bit and go up a little bit. But hopefully there's just enough metal to weld down that edge. Now normally I'd edge set this and put that over so it makes a flush gap, but because the metal is so trimmed back, you can see here it's just barely touching it. So I'm going to have to clean this edge a little more, just make sure I'm in the absolute right place for that seam, because obviously that's seen afterwards. Dress these a little bit with the hammer and dolly, see if I can get those dints out. As I say, I'm not a panel beater, but I'll do my best. But before that, I'm going to clean all this off, get rid of that little bit of filler there, and then hopefully we're in a fairly good position. Now, you'll see here that the line there of the wheel arch doesn't follow the line of the existing wheel arch. Now, I don't know which is right and which is wrong. I suspect this is wrong. It looks way too thin there. And looking at the one that we've prepared earlier, it sort of just fades away to nothing. So as long as that matches the existing wheel arch, we should be good. So I'll have to reshape that ever so slightly, which will move this ever so slightly, which will move this ever so slightly. So on and on and on it goes. However, the relief for the rear bumper fits in roughly the right place. It's not perfect, but the fit actually is really, really good down there. So if I can get a good weld in there, this thickness of filler then is out the window. And this is all going to be good down here, which is good. That should look really nice then. We've got a good seam on the back. It will all come back a little bit. This is all just a little bit wrong. I've eased it out a little just to try and improve it, but it's not right yet. So what I'm going to do is I'll get to cleaning that rest of that filler off. So I'll need my mask on because it's thick and stinky. And I don't want, when you blow your nose on a night and get in the shower, there's like a black sort of ridge around it, a tide mark, if you will, of vile, nasty, horrible stuff that's washed off you. So I dread to think of that going in my lungs, if I'm really honest. So I'll don my wire wheel and off we go. So, excuse me, having a bite and a few jelly babies. You can't get behind to hammer that. So what I've done is I've just sort of tweaked the dent out a little, as best I could with a pair of mole grips. As I say, I'm not a dent puller. I can't do that sort of work, unfortunately. I was the manager of a smart repair company for a while, and I did try it. And if you've ever seen anybody do it, it looks incredibly easy. Trust me. It's one of those jobs where people make it look incredibly easy, and it is really hard. So I've got the bulk of the dents out, although it isn't perfectly smooth. You'll notice I've just radiused these out, rolled these out a little bit, so that when I try the panel in, excuse me, when I try the panel in, all being well, it will fit back to where it needs to, and then I can press those back in to it. What I'm thinking of doing, I don't know really, just shaping those to that. Actually, it's not a terrible fit, that now. It's wrong, but it's not a million miles away. I'm going to have to work on the arch area at the front. That's what's amiss with that. If you can see here, where you can see that the this part seemed to narrow here. It's actually this that needs rolling out a little rather than that rolling. Moving further back, which actually makes the job a little easier. So I'll do that. So sorry about that. I paused you for a moment there while I did some remedial work to this panel. What I've done there, you can probably see, is I've just put some nicks in with the slitting disc. This has served two purposes. It's allowed this to move to better follow the inner arch, which is imperative really. It's also allowed me to move this back so that this line here meets up with this line here. Can you see that? Hopefully you can see that. That's where it wants to be. Now this wants to be a little bit higher. I've just clamped it temporarily. You can see there's a fine overlap there. Now I'm going to leave that. Normally I would trim that down to about 1 mil, but I'm not going to on this pan, purely because I don't have enough material up here and stuff to be trimming it. And it meets pretty much there. Now then, I would like that a lot higher, truth be told. It would go, because the seam would take it, but as you move it up, as you move this section up, you move it in also, and these will pull back in to that quite nicely. And I can then weld those seams back up that somebody's put in, and I can use this then just to dress those in. Again, wouldn't normally do that, but it's already been ruined here, so that's a sort of an accident repair, if you like. So, I did a bit of a video here. I shot it twice, but for some reason the sound wasn't recording. So, all being well, the sound is now recording. I'll just adjust your modicum there. Right, so I've stopped and had my dinner. I've got a few things ready here. So I've cleaned the top edge of that panel, cleaned the paint off. It's like I assume it's an epoxy, but it's something like that. I've hole punched around the edge here. Obviously, as you hole punch, that cleans the paint off by going through the metal. I don't need to worry about this bit of paint here because that's going to burn off anyway, but I out-weld into that section. And the inside, I've left the paint on to try and trap a little bit inside. I've also dressed this section here. So here, I've adjusted that, and you'll see why in a second. And I've straightened out this section here and just put a couple of nicks in just to change that profile a little. That's to allow me to alter this to fit here better. I've also just slightly adjusted that to allow this to come up just slightly over stock. Now, no one would ever know I'd done that, okay, if I didn't tell you. But that then makes this fit with a slight overlap there where I can weld it into the section. So if I adjust that in now, you can see that that follows here. This corner is where I had to adjust it. Obviously, I'm tucking behind a little here. This wheel arch has been welded in and they've put it behind the panel originally, so I've had to bring this out thicker here. Now, this here will be welded across there solid, but there will be quite a skimmer fill of this. This blends away into nothing. And what my plan is afterwards, I will, once it's welded in, I will roll that edge over and weld these back up. It's no biggie really to do that. That allows me then to pull this section back. Just check on the camera that you can see what I'm doing there. So I'll clamp that in place, just loosely. The back section here, what I'm trying to line up is this corner here to within a thickness of the material. And then I can pull these back into suit like that. Yes, there's going to have to be a skimmer filler. I would actually like that pulled out further. So I may just, before I start to weld it, just roll this lip out a little, so towards me. And then that when I clamp it together, that will roll the whole panel out. In fact, I'll do that now, just to try that. Worst case scenario is I just end up putting it back. So what I'm hoping for here is that it pulls out the top section where it fits here. So hopefully now, when I replace that into there, it is unfortunately a little bit, it's not a hatchet job. This, obviously, I'm trying to do it as good as I possibly can. So that has now increased that distance here. So when I push that in, it's touching there. That's absolutely bang on, actually. Excuse me. Needs to go up a little there. Everything moves. Whenever you change the shape of something, everything moves, all just a little bit. So that just needs to go in there. This corner needs to come down. There is, you will notice, a gap there, which I wish wasn't there. But unfortunately, I'm kind of stuck with that. But I can address it. Luckily, I have the technology and the knowledge on how to do it. So that's good there. As I clamp that together now, hopefully, it's just slightly rolling that out. You can see, you should be able to see it moving there. Look, can you see it? That's it coming out to where I want it. When I put that clamp on, clamp that there. So I don't want to weld that before I'm happy with the fit and finish. So what I'll do is I'll put this one on here and then I'll nudge that. So now if I just put that there, I should be able to just ease that up to where it needs to be like that. If I check the fit, boom shakalaka. Very happy with that. It's moved it up here a little as well. We're good from here to here. The only section now I'm a little concerned about is this. This part here needs stretching out. So I'm going to just do that off camera and I'm just going to just give that a little tap. Right, so hopefully you can see that from there. What I've tried to do there is just stretch that out ever so slightly. You can see there that all I've done with that is use the back of my hammer just against the floor, just to stretch it out. It's not shrinking and stretching machine by any means. I don't want to destroy the panel. I have a blacksmith's hammer and that end is quite sharp. It's not sharp as in cutting sharp, but it's sharp for a hammer. And that's just increased that ever so slightly, hopefully. Now, I haven't tried it. This is real time. I only paused you for 2 minutes while I did that. So, if I just set that to there again, clamps on, it is unbelievable. Basically, when I left last night, this was almost ready to this point here. And I thought, shall I just hang on and weld it up? And I thought, you know what? It's not just going to go. So I may as well get myself off and just start again fresh in the morning. And here we are. This is where you end up. All being well, if I just click that to there, that's actually a lot better now. That's come out a lot better, actually. It's a much better fit is that now. Much, much. As I say, I'm not a panel beater by any means. But quite honestly, some of these little jobs just have to have a go at. Now, so, as you hear the tripod hit the floor, you can see here now I've got a very small gap. Oops, there you go, sorry about that. Small gap here, but that line here lines up with that line here. Okay, this is obviously touching here because that's, as this goes in, it's forcing that out. So that's good to get a weld on. Now you see that edge is a little bit rough there. Normally I'd cut that off. I'm so scared I've ended up with little to no metal to weld to. I'm just going to leave that for now and weld across it. I can do that. I may just trim the edge off it a little bit. So this is still lining up, which is good. So we're still lining up to here. And as you can see, the gaps there are very minimal. You're wanting that to be as tight as possible. And if you look across there, let it do its thing, it's close. All it takes is that to push it in. Okay? The shadow actually makes it look a little worse. You can see that's a good tight fit. All the way across here where somebody's sort of destroyed it. Now I have run a flat disc just down the back of this because it actually overlapped it, which ended in tears, really. It exploded. So you can see that now is a pretty decent fit to there. Okay, so that pulls into there. There is just a small gap there to weld up. Oops, excuse me. This zoomed in stuff is terrible. There's just a small gap here to weld up, which I can do no problem, even if I have to maybe fillet a small piece of material into there, but I'll decide that when I get there. These are now clamped up in place, so I know that if I clamp that, if I weld this and then clamp that in, I can pull this corner into there a little bit. Yes, it'll pull that in a little bit, but it's not going to end up making the wing go wibbly wobbly all the way down. So basically, this is now ready to start and weld. Once I've welded the top edge, I'll then rivet this back round. I'm going to weld here as well. And then I'll obviously drill this and spot weld it through here. These are all ready to go. I probably won't weld these yet, just in case. So in case I need to change anything. Now, so I'm going to weld this by doing a series of spots across there, probably about 4 or 5 inches apart. So I'll probably start wherever it's closest, which is here, and that's a good thick weld. I've laid a weld down the edge of the material here. So I'll put a spot on here, and while that's cooling, I'll put a spot on here and a spot on here, 5 or 6 inches apart, and then I'll walk away. I will let it all cool. The worst thing you can possibly do is go, that's going really well. Sometimes I go and stop. You must stop. I like to be able to put my hand above the panel. It's still going to warp. You are never going to avoid warp. Anybody says they can do it without warping the panel, I'd love to know how they do that, because I've never been able to manage it, and I don't know anybody else who can either. So a couple of little spots, wherever it's still cool, put another spot. Should still be cool on the periphery of that panel. I have been known to put a damp cloth on it afterwards, but then of course you've got an ingress of moisture and you're going to get rust. So anyway, I'll set the welder up. I'll make any final adjustments I need to weld to make, and then I think we'll start on the welding. So I'm going to let that cool. You'll have noticed I did a couple of bigger hits here and there, mainly here and here. If you saw the video, I've done a couple of little tiny double taps on it, and here, because this is There's a curve here anyway that stops a lot of distortion, but because it's been so badly destroyed, I'm not too concerned about it warping this panel now. I mean, it's only a semblance of its former shape. I have put a spot here just to tie those together, and that is now welded across the bottom of there, and that's pulled this in a lot tighter here now. And then all I do is I just keep coming back and putting a spot at the edge of a spot here, and then one maybe here, and then one maybe here, and one maybe here. And then I'll come down and maybe do an adjacent one or another one once it's completely cold. It doesn't really matter where you do it. I try to think that if it moves a bit here, you're probably better moving along quite a way and letting it move along. That's just how I do it, but it doesn't mean it's the correct way to do it. It's just the way I do it. But actually, you should have just seen me literally in real time about 30 seconds ago. So this is still pretty warm around here. It's not hot. You can see there, that's the finished deal. Now, I appreciate as you're looking at that, that looks an absolute terrible mess. Okay. And the reason for that is because obviously as you're doing a spot and then letting it cool, you're not letting the metal flow together as neatly as it would normally. However, what I've tried to go for is a continuous weld here. These are the pieces here where the slits were, where it was overlapped. Now, these are still a little bit wiggly wobbly. You probably can't see in the pictures. It probably actually looks better than it does in the flesh. There's a tiny bit of warp in there where there was before. There was a crease here, as you can probably still see there at the end of my thumb. This has obviously still got a little bit of heat in it. It's not hot. I can't just grind this back in one fell swoop either. Like when I was doing the welding, obviously grinding back and flat disking and the like carries a lot of heat in the material. And again, if you localize that heat, or if you don't localize that heat, whichever really, as soon as you put heat in a metal, it tries to revert back to its original shape. If you look from a distance there, it does look quite nice, I have to say. I'm just looking through the camera. This edge will be ground back to make that a nice solid 3 thicknesses thick smooth edge. This will be cut off. Obviously, that's just the excess material I left on. But I will now start and ease that back with the grinding discs and the flat wheels and things. And then across this weld, I will be applying some waterproof filler to make sure that if there is any tiny little pinhole, which I don't think there is, in all honesty, but if there was, that will then be protected and the moisture can't get any ingress. It is a shame. Right, so hopefully, just been watching the montage, right? During the montage, I must have knocked the gimbal with the camera on. Sorry about that. So you probably won't have seen me finishing this off. However, ta-da! Here is the finished panel. Okay, now then, I am quite happy with that, considering how bad it was. Usually I would have it a lot neater than that, but unfortunately it had already suffered a little bit of damage and previous repair stroke abuse. So it's obviously a little tiny bit of a compromise, particularly in here. You can see where there's a divot there. That's still where it's slightly dinted in. There's a high point there, which I'll need to get rid of. However, it has come out a lot better than I expected. The panel's gone in. You can see I've ground down the edge here now. I've cut that section off at the bottom, which is the bit I was videoing when I've knocked the gimbal. Sorry about that. So if you didn't see it, you didn't see it. There's not a lot I can do about that now. I'm not doing it all again. So I've cut that down. I've run the grinder along the edge. So you should be able to see now that the panels all line up. There's a tiny bit of an air gap here. And a tiny bit of an air gap here. I'll pinch those up a bit. And I'm just seeing there's a pinhole here. It's not actually right through, but I'll stick a blob of weld in that and grind it back before I go any further. This is all now ground back. It is one piece. Okay, it's a seam weld all the way down there. Yes, that incurs a tiny bit of warpage, but it makes for a far, far better repair, because although this looks like two pieces, this is now one piece with that, which adds strength, it adds structure, and it's how it left the factory. Before I put any filler on, this was the seam, this is the joint, this is my section that I changed to meet this section, so that's what I changed there. It's pretty smooth and flat, okay? You can see here, I spot welded up that one needs to come off a little bit more. The seams are now gone. One was about here, one was about here, and that's where I welded up the edge there. And again, I've ground that back, so the two edges now are a nice, neat, solid seam. You won't be able to see that, but they are. But yeah, overall, let me know what you think. I'm pretty pleased with that. It will obviously need re-drilling here before I go with any filler or anything for the bumper to go back on. But yeah, that's come out really nice. This gives you an example of how it would normally be. This is the sort of, that's how it would be if this panel hadn't already been sort of damaged here and stuff. But it should allow now for a really nice repair on that. But yeah, so if you think that's a nice job, let me know. If you think it's a terrible job, let me know. But please, if you're going to sort of say it's terrible, because I don't think it is, but if you think that's terrible, please tell me how I could have done it better and not what you've read on the internet from experience, please, because I'm always in to learn. You know, that you can't know everything, and I'm always prepared to hear things. I know people will be saying, you should have butt jointed it together. There was no way you could have butt jointed that together. Absolutely no way in this lifetime, and not come out with a good shaped repair, because there's no shape there already. But yeah, so if you like the video, there goes the gimbal again. Went full on Yorkshire there. If you're happy with the video, please like and subscribe. If you haven't subscribed, please do. It helps me an awful lot. If you haven't, click the bell. That seems to help as well. I'm not going to go into some weird sort of belly thing. If you'd like to have a look at my merchandise, I'm hoping to do some fresh merchandise. I have a video coming out, or it should have come out by now, of me wearing the merchandise, because I ordered some. But I don't wear it for this. My girlfriend said, wear your Yorkshire Classic Cars Limited shirt for when you're doing your YouTube videos. But this is how you end up. So anywho, hope you liked it. That's how I approach the most common repair on most Spitfires and GT6s. Take a look at my other videos. Thank you and good night.